Hey ladies and gentlemen, it's Mr. Anderson coming to you again with section 6.2.1 from our CPM ebooks, our Common Core Algebra ebooks. And we're going to talk today about when your model is the best model and when your model is appropriate. Now I'm kind of combining something from an old lesson into this lesson for the purposes of leading into this lesson. And the point I want to emphasize is that when we're creating models, we've spent some time doing these things by hand because sometimes our understanding of the technology is not the best. And when we're doing this thing for application or an industry, we don't do this by hand. We do this using a computer. And today I'm going to show you how one way that we can do that using an interactive tool called Desmos. Obviously, another way to do it is to use something called a TI-84 Plus, and I'm not going to do that on this video because doing so at a distance, if you don't have one, is not going to be helpful for you. I just am going to let you know that a computer can do something very, very quickly that it would take you and I a very long time to do. And what I mean by that is every time we take some data, the more data we have, the longer it's going to take. We would plot our model, our line for our model, and we would calculate a residual. In order to magnify the power of big residuals, big errors, we square them, okay? And that's where a term that we're going to use today, or a phrase, the least squares regression line, that's where that comes from. It takes all the residuals, it squares them, it adds them up, and then it does some work with that. So one of the big takeaways from today, I hope, is going to be that errors, big errors in that residual, big residuals are going to have a big impact on our model, our least squares regression line, our LSRL, least squares regression line, okay? And we're going to use an idea by the end of the lesson called a residual plot, right? It's a graph of residuals. That's all that is, to determine how well that LSRL fits the data, how well our model fits the data. And this is going to take us all the way back to some data from section 6.1 where they were looking through the drain pipe to see the football field. And if you remember that, great. If not, maybe you want to go back and check it out. I don't know. But it says here, we completed an investigation and helped Robbie use a viewing tube to see a football game. Typical data is shown in the table below. And here's our data. Here's our X data. Here's our Y data. And it was something to the effect of if he was standing this far from the tube, he could see this many yards of the field, this wide, and so on and so forth. And we notice that he gets farther and farther back, he can see more, I believe was the scenario. And I took the graph from the Desmos e-tool, and I pasted it into our notes. And we're going to do something with this, but first let me show you where this is. All right, it's in 6-47. Here's that data, and they have the e-tool embedded, and you can just click on it right here. And this is a pretty cool one because, of course, I can do some zooming. Check out the strength of this model, right? It definitely looks linear, right? I mean, that's almost perfectly linear. It looks like this one wouldn't be on a perfect line. Maybe this one's off so slightly, but that's really gosh darn close. And as a statistician, you really, really hope you're modeling something that would be that easy to work with. The strength is really really high, or it's really strong. The reason I say that is because it's all closely fitting that line. It looks like it could all be connected by a line, so it's linear, and then of course we increase from left to right, so we have a positive direction. Now check this out, because this is what the computer can do for us. And I'm just going to go like this and read the directions. So we've got that set up there, and the directions here tell me when entering the data into the calculator. First thing we want to do is we want to, where did it go? Sketch the graph in your paper and then write the equation of the LSRL, right? Like I said, we're going to use a computer to do this for the first time, and this is built into this Desmos e-tool. I'm going to scroll down, and it's got this circle under 6. Now, if it's not highlighted, it's not going to show up. But Desmos did some work here, and this is I know it looks like the slope-intercept form, but it's not because of these subscripts here, because the subscripts are tied to the table that we've got our data in. So it's kind of like a living, breathing function that adjusts as I'm going to change those things. But I can select this, and Desmos now throws that linear model in there, and that looks really, really good. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to go over to my notes and I'm going to sketch it. Now, it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to try to do this in blue, okay, so it matches up a little bit. Oh gosh, looks like I've got an intercept there, and it's going to go something like that. And wow, that's actually not bad. That's going to be pretty gosh darn close. Like I said, it's not perfect. Let me show you what I'm talking about. There we go. Pretty good. Not perfect. I know my scale's a little off because my graph may not be the exact same dimensions, but you see what I'm talking about there. Now watch what's going to happen, right? We also have the equation. I see I got a slope of 0.13373. I've got an intercept of 1.65952. This looks awesome. Okay, now check this out, because what they tell me is after we've got that model set up, Amy, when she was typing this data in, accidentally mistyped, made a typo. Instead of entering in 144 and, look at this, 20.7, she meant to type 144 and 10.7. Make this change and sketch the new LSRL. Okay, now watch what's going to happen here. I'm going to get rid of that just for a moment. I'm going to go back up here. I can modify this entry, and I can change this from 20.7 to 10.7. Now look at what happens, right? Look at what we see there. We see, I think, what amounts to be an outlier, right? This fell off of the trend of data. Now I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to turn this on, and I'm going to change the color, and now that'll let me know that it is the modified version of my line. And now I'm going to try to sketch this on my graph. It goes up through like that third dot, and then it kind of is like a 1/3 to 2/3 ratio between the last and second to last, and it's in green. So I'm going to try to mark that up or sketch that on my graph. And do my sketches need to be perfect? No, of course they absolutely do not, but it should help me answer a question or two. I'm just about there, folks. Sorry for the delay. I don't know. I think I did an okay job there. Let's go back and look. Okay, look at the difference. Okay, and obviously that point got moved down here at 144 to 10.7. It got moved down there, right? So that would have been the green scenario, would have had that one eliminated. But look at what happened. That line, right, that least squares regression line got pulled down toward the outlier, okay? Right? It got pulled down toward the outlier. So the impact of the outlier is that the outlier is an attracting point, right? It draws that LSRL to it, okay? So you can kind of think of it that way, and I'm going to try to draw this, for you guys. We'll see how good of an artist Anderson is. When the point got changed and that came down, right, once we corrected that error, my LSRL tipped down as well. The other thing that is definitely worth noticing is that my y-intercept also moved up. So my slope decreased, but my y-intercept also increased. Now consider the opposite, right? If my outlier was up above, right? Maybe Amy mistyped it and it was 30.7, then obviously that would work the same, but in the other direction, okay? So just keep those kinds of things in mind. That outlier is an attracting point. And then it says, well, Amy's predictions for the field, okay? Again, going back to the drain tube and amount of field that she can see model. Amy's mistake will cause predictions to be close to the wall, to be too large, and predictions far from the wall to be too small. That's kind of what we're seeing in this particular case here. So it's good to know. It's good to interpret that stuff in context. The last thing that I want to do today is I want to mention what's called a residual plot. And I'm just looking at my own notes here, making sure I covered everything that I wanted to cover. I mentioned that, let me just make this. I called it an attracting point, and your LSRL, like if you don't like the word attracting point, will always be pulled toward an outlier. And the reason is, and this goes a little bit deeper than we do in this course, but the reason is one of the main things we use to calculate a least squares regression line or a model for this type of data is we use an average. And an outlier really impacts an average one way or another. So keep that in mind, right? Yeah. Okay. Last thing, as I was mentioning, I want to talk about a residual plot, and I made these kind of small because I wanted to get them on your screen. Obviously, this is just number 49 from your ebook, and I can show you guys that right here. Looks like this. We've got a couple scatter plots and the residual plots associated with said scatter plot. And a residual plot can help you determine if a linear model is a good fit, or even if it's not appropriate. When an LSRL is drawn on a scatter plot, the residual plot can also be created. A residual plot has an x-axis, the same as the scatter plot, and a y-axis that plots the residuals. Now, residuals, as we've discussed already, can be positive or negative, which is why we see on all of our residual plots here, positive space and negative space. And a good residual plot should be a residual plot, well, give me a second. Let's talk about A first, and then we're going to talk about what a good residual plot looks like. So this is number 49. Our job is to do some matching, okay? Check out my residual plot, scatter plot number 1. I see some dots that are really, really close to the line, and then as we get further down the x-axis, my dots get farther and farther. That's telling me that scatter plot number 1 is going with residual plot C. Okay, that was pretty predictable for me. Okay, as I continue here, I see I'm going to go to scatter plots number 3 here. As I start here, I've got quite a few dots that are above and below my my linear model, but then everything for a while here dips below. Everything right through here is below my model, meaning my residuals there are going to be negative. So that to me says residual plot A. Now scatter plot 2 is going to go with residual plot B, and this is, in my opinion, the best model, because notice what I'm doing here. It's above and below, above and below, above and below, and my residual plot looks the same way. This to me right here looks pretty gosh darn curvy and predictable. Okay, and this to me right here also looks predictable, but for a different reason. It widens like a funnel as my X continues to grow, and residual plots should not be predictable. I always tell students when we're looking at a residual plot should look like you've got just a white piece of printer paper, and somebody took a pepper shaker and shook your pepper onto that white piece of printer paper. It should look like they are randomly strewn if you have an unbiased model, okay? And that is the best kind of residual plot, okay? For which of the scatter plots does the linear model fit best? I kind of already mentioned that. I think the best linear model is scatter plot 2, which matches residual plot B. How does the residual plot help you make that decision? As I mentioned, there should be no evidence of any sort of pattern, and there should be there should be evidence of randomness, and it should look like a pepper shaker on a piece of printer paper. Okay, folks, that's it for what we're going to talk about here in our first 621 video. And I've got a little bit of a review preview for you guys. Just a couple here, 65 to 67. I'd like you to try these things because, of course, these things are going to help us identify what areas of growth we still need to get active in. And give them a shot. ask some questions, and we'll see if we can get you some answers. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.